Today, Bob and I talk about the second part of the U.S. threat assessment, and we get into dealing with things like climate change and cascading industry failures, foreign influence during a crisis, and space-based assets and radiological reentry.
How about everybody's favorite green energy transition, the large-scale battery storages, foreign intelligence, and environmental crimes and toxic dumping by criminal networks? All this and more. You know what the worst part about arriving on a hazmat scene is?
Besides the fact that my hair looks like a rat's nest when I'm done?
That, but also uncertainty. You have no idea what's in the air.
Yeah, it's just kind of assuming it's a chemical. It doesn't really cut it, and you need answers, and you kind of need them fast.
And that's where the Explorer comes in. Real-time chemical ID and quantification right in the field.
Well beyond it's probably just bad. It's going to tell you exactly what's there and how much.
So you can set up your safety zones like an adult and not a rookie guessing where to put the tape.
It's going to give you defensible, quantitative data in seconds, making decisions a whole lot easier to make.
So no more waiting around for an answer, just solid, life-saving intelligence.
Check out the Explorer and stop guessing. Go to 908devices.com. You know what stresses me out about hazmat runs?
What, where everybody's walking around saying it smells like hot garbage?
Yeah, exactly, right? More guessing, less tactics.
That's where Teledyne FLIR Defense builds detection tools so we can stop doing that. They have real sensors for real CBRNE threats.
And they've been around for like 30 years helping first responders know exactly what we're dealing with.
They're in hazmat, homeland security, public safety. They make ugly scenes into clear answers.
Because remember, the more you know, the smarter you operate.
Yeah. Teledyne FLIR Defense, any threat, anywhere, without mystery.
And as we promised, we were looking into solutions for battery fires, and although many companies have put their product in front of us, there's been one or two noteworthy ones, this one in particular, that extinguishes lithium-ion battery fires. Trust me, it works on a whole other class of fires, and it prevents the fire spread, and it prevents the lithium-ion battery from reigniting.
Yep, and before that keyboard warrior starts caps locking, asking for proof, the links are going to be in the show notes for Class A and B of the UL, and as well as BSI for 10 categories, including lithium-ion batteries.
Now, we've put it through our own firefighter field testing, yes, in our backyards. And I got to tell you, though, even though we were really impressed with the results. But we highly suggest that you do your own myth busting. Do some research, because it's available in a variety of options. It'll integrate into any process that you have. Check them out at Fire Suppression Solutions or click on the link in the show notes. We're getting into climate change. Now, this isn't like a political conversation or anything like that, so we're just reading what the assessment... I don't need the keyboard warriors angry typing me about politics, okay? We're just reading what the report says, and the report says, quote, an increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events are stressing aging U.S. industry and energy infrastructure to the point of systemic vulnerability, leading to unplanned releases of hazardous materials in regions previously considered to be low risk.
Okay, so let's explain what that means to our high schoolers out there. The power plants, the chemical factories, the pipelines, they're getting old. And at the same time, the storms are actually getting bigger and weirder. And when a massive flood or something like a huge freeze hits an old factory, things will break and leak, especially for my friends up in the Northeast. You know how pipes will blow. This is happening in places that aren't used to dealing with this or these kinds of disasters.
Yeah, and you can mix it, right? It's not just like a hot and a cold thing. It's a dry and a wet thing as well. So if you're from a state that is typically like dry and you're like, oh, no, we never have to worry about floods, all of a sudden you get these unprecedented floodings or even wildfires, and they can compromise local storage facilities that were never actually designed to be in these type of conditions.
Now, for the hazmat people, I would think that you have to change around from being, we go to calls, right? Because which is in essence a reactive type operation, right? We wait for the bells to go off and then we get on our horses and get out there, right? But I think we're going to have to start getting a little more predictive in these things. And one of the ways you can do it is by grabbing your tier 2 reports, which is your chemical inventory, and ask yourself, if we got like, let's say 10 inches of rain in 2 hours, where does this pesticide plant runoff go? Right? This report is highlighting that if we have infrastructure failure, and that could be the primary driver on a hazmat incident, it might not just be human error.
Yeah. And things that are a little outside of our control are foreign influences during a crisis. The report says, quote, foreign adversaries, particularly Russia and China, are refining their use of AI-driven bots to flood the information space during a U.S. domestic emergency or to sow distrust in local authorities. Well, guess what, guys? We are local authorities when shit hits the fan. And this can complicate emergency response efforts. The shit hit the part fan wasn't the quote. You guys know.
That would be something if they had that in there.
Can you imagine? That would be great.
All right, so translation is when something bad happens, like a chemical spill, right? There's going to be this goes back to, like, you know, the evacuation versus the shelter in place. Is that you can tell people to shelter in place for a limited amount of time, and then you're going to have to feed them, like a drip campaign, information. Right. And if you don't keep them fed with information, there's going to be a problem. Now, it sounds innocent enough because we could put out amber alerts and we could put out silver alerts on your cell phone. It is dramatically easier than it was 25, 30 years ago. But imagine now that bad actors online start spreading lies immediately. They might tell people that the water is being poisoned when it isn't, or that they run towards the danger instead of away to it. Right? And just to make the police and fire departments look incompetent, which then says, if this clown is telling me to stay in my apartment to shelter in place, are they the best? Because I don't want to go on a side note of this, but it makes me laugh about this, is that in everybody's mind, they are the hero of the story, right? So in their mind, they're the guy that comes out of their apartment and saves the day. And if they think that the people that are supposed to be in charge are not doing the right thing, that hero instinct is going to come out of nowhere, and they're going to be swinging from ropes to come into and fix the problem. And that could be a problem.
Yeah, think about it. But like, think back like 10 years ago. You would have read this and been like, there's no way in shape or form. But I could absolutely see a situation in which the misinformation that's out there turns people against the first responders. Like, what do you mean we're poisoning the water supply by putting our trucks, attaching it to the water supply, right? Like, we're not pumping chemicals in there. We're taking them out. What are you talking about? But this is what we're dealing with. Your biggest enemy on scene may not be the chemical leak at all. It could be the panic and the chaos that's caused by some viral tic-tac tweet nonsense that's happening, especially in the age of AI. It looks 100% real, but it's 100% bullshit, and we pay the price for that.
Right. Now, that's where I think the real public information officer is going to be a part of this whole technical reference team. Imagine if you start plugging, and this is something I know we kind of do in training, but we don't really do in real life, but if you don't have them in that technical reference team, right, that huddle, and if you're even getting the PIOs hazmat trained, you need to provide that PIO with a clear, like, unfakeable data quick so they can debunk these possible lies. And I'm not saying even foreign back. There's a lot. They call them trolls. I mean, they're just shit stirrers online, and they could turn a crowd hostile. Yeah, or even ignore, like, evacuation orders. It's possible.
It's a real thing. And as we're starting to get to things that were like you would never really expect, how about shit from space? And I'm not talking about like UFOs or IAFOs. I don't know what they call the new abbreviation for UFOs nowadays. But there is legitimately so many satellites and things that are up in orbit. Eventually, they have to come down. So as the threat assessment says, the rapid expansion of commercial and military
constellations.
Is that constellations? That doesn't look like constellations to me. In lower Earth orbit, being dyslexic, it really makes reading hard, guys, increases the statistical probability of uncontrolled reentries, which sometimes utilize special materials or nuclear power sources for deep space maneuvers. Holy crap, radiation from space.
Yeah. All right, so there's so many satellites up there, right? They are bound to fall down, right? Everything is put up there, and it's slowly, I guess, devolving down. And while most of them burn up, there are some hardened parts, especially those with nuclear batteries, because not everything up there is running on a Duracell, or an Alka. What would they call it? Oh, with the cat, with the lightning bolt.
Oh, the Energizer. Ding, 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 ding.
But I did not have space debris with nuclear, payloads on my bingo card for 2026.
Right. And it's not going to come over as like, oh, we've got, satellite or, aliens touch down. It's going to come over as a downed aircraft, which is more than likely going to be your downed satellite. So you think you're responding to an aircraft. Listen, for all you know, it could be a little Cessna that goes down. We're not necessarily talking about a large 747. So you arrive on scene, you see this kind of pile of debris and metal and burning, look just like an aircraft that went down, and it's actually a downed satellite. These can be potentially thermally hot from kind of burning through the atmosphere, and they have the potential to be radioactive as well.
Now, as far as the hazmat response, I didn't see this one coming, but you probably want to focus on like your highway or rail incidents, right? The report suggests that we may need to dust off the radiological response manuals, it specifically says in there. So if you find a piece of high-tech space junk, your first move should probably be a radiation sweep before anybody touches it.
Well, your first move should be having us come help you brush up on your radiological response, because we've got everything from 4-hour classes to 3-day classes to help you with radiation.
Agreed. That's fun. All right. So today's episode is brought to you by Rigaku Analytical Devices, who are the folks who've been perfecting the 1064 nanometer Raman longer than some of you guys have been doing hazmat.
Yeah, and they just launched their 4th generation hand analyzer, the Icon X, and it is built specifically for the real world stuff that we have to deal with, like dirty powders, mixed materials, dyes, colors, all the things that throw most other instruments into total temper tantrums.
The 1064 nanometer laser means reduced fluorescence, so you get fast, reliable chemical ID in under a minute instead of staring at the blank screen, wondering what went wrong.
This isn't just a new platform. This is a new platform. This is not a total up. Wow, I cannot talk today. This is not just an upgrade. It is a new platform. It's a whole new toolbox. It supports new accessories, new standoff analyzations, and it can get you answers without you having to get close.
So if you want an analyzer that's been evolving right alongside the hazmat world, check out Rigaku's newest Raman at rigakuanalytical.com. You know what I love about the city?
The protesters blocking the streets?
Yes, the e-scooter gangs. That's what I love.
Yes, because nothing screams hazmat like a moped with a battery that's about to go nuclear.
Right. That's where the Obexian FR saves the day.
It's lightweight, mobile-friendly, designed for us, the first responder, because honestly, the last thing we need is extra weight when things are heating up.
And it's third-party tested to lower toxic gases below the ideal H levels.
Which means if you accidentally breathe in some of this, it's not the end of the world while you're putting out a scooter fire.
And if you need more, Obexian FR comes by the pallet or a certified polydrum kit.
Which is perfect when you're like, holy crap, we're going to need a lot of this.
Yes. So protect your team and your lungs. Go to learn more at thehazmatguys.dgeo.com. That's thehazmatguys.dgeo.com. Yes. So keeping going on this thing. Supply chain vulnerabilities for PPE. Couldn't get any worse.
So with the stuff raining down on you from space and the bad actors and all this other stuff, we may not be able to get PPE. Wonderful.
All right, so here's what the assessment says. It says U.S. reliance on foreign-sourced precursors for high-performance polymers and specialized electronics remains a strategic weakness, and potential disruptions in the Indo-Pacific could lead to acute shortages of critical safety equipment.
Yeah, we don't make a lot of stuff here in the country. We get a lot of stuff from other countries. And if we're not playing nicely in the sandbox with them, and again, not a political thing back and forth, just the fact that if we're not playing nicely with these countries in the sandbox, we may not get what we need to play safe.
Yeah, so this is a logistical problem for first responders, right? This means that the shelf life, and I get that, oh, these suits have to go out in 10 years or whatever make and model you have. But now the shelf life of your gear is now a national security issue.
Yeah, which means that departments, like, how do we solve this, right? Because you can't not have gear, and you can't be in gear that's no longer certified or expired. So what's the solution? You should consider diversifying your cachet. If all of your levels A's comes from one factory, relying on, say, like a Chinese polymer or some other material that they're getting from somewhere else, you're kind of unprotected. So you do your sourcing, or do your research to get the proper sourcing. Try to domestically source as best as possible, and try to keep that variety of where stuff comes from inside of your toolbox, so to speak.
All right. Now, everybody's this one's definitely is a hot button one. The green energy transition and local large scale battery storages. The assessment says as global transition to renewable energy accelerates, the deployment of massive battery energy storage systems, or BESS, and the transport of high capacity lithium ion battery components are creating new categories of industrial vulnerability, particularly regarding thermal runaway events triggered by cyber disruption and physical damage.
You know, it's funny because me and Bob were talking about this literally about a day or two ago. We fly across the country a lot, and Bob had mentioned that looking out of the airplane, there was a path that you were taking that was, you could look down and just see fields and fields and fields of nothing but solar panels. And his observations are not wrong. These things are being built in these giant acreage structures, and they're known as battery farms, and they're designed to just store electricity. If they've got wind farms, they can do wind as well from or store electricity from the winds. And these they're like millions of cell phone batteries joined together, right? If you haven't taken one of our classes, we describe how they put these cells together, and if they get too hot, or if they get hacked, or infrastructure, or they get shot, they get damaged in any way, shape, or form, they can release a tremendous amount of toxic smoke and fire.
Right. So, all right. As far as the first responder, just G-pop fire talk is that we have to reprogram our heads that these type of things are not like regular structure fires, or even EVs, right? If you have a transport truck that's going to be having a problem, right? You're talking about a long-term hazmat event, and the smoke that's coming off is laced with hydrofluoric acid, which, for the Texan here, explain to the firefighter knuckle dragger what that means to them, and other respiratory problems. So SCBA is key.
Yeah. And your water supply is something that you need to think about too, right? Because if you kind of, I'm not going to say it's an industry standard, because there's no industry standard yet for batteries, but for the most part, people are contemplating the let it burn strategy. If you don't contemplate that and you end up giving into the we have to do something, you need to kind of calculate your water supply to make sure that you're going to be able to keep up with the nonstop burning that's going to be happening. Responders, we should always be coordinated with local utility companies, and trying to identify where these BSS farms are located and whose jurisdiction they're in, who owns them, who's the safety person for them, who's the representative for them, and if there's any particular chemical hazards associated with that facility.
All right. Second to last one, foreign intelligence and insider threats at chem facilities. So this one, it says, foreign intelligence services are increasingly targeting personnel with access to U.S. critical infrastructure, including chemical manufacturing and water treatment facilities, to gain logic access or physically bypass the capabilities for future leverage.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Spy agencies from other countries, they're not just like trying to get into the FBI and the CIA. They want to get into all of our infrastructure, and especially a chemical plant. Like, think of how, like, I don't have to bring or buy chemicals. I could just figure out how to release what's already there. This is a huge deal when it comes to responding into the possibility of one of these chemical plants having an issue. They want to basically be able to press a button, and if they can do that from a distance, they could hurt us here in the U.S. without ever actually stepping foot on the U.S.
Now, for the just first responder, not even the hazmat guy, imagine going to a leak at a facility, right? And maybe the plant manager is compromised, and he gives you information about handling this leak. And what if he's giving you the wrong information? I'm not saying you should be like suspicious of everybody, but at the same time, I've seen a shitload of people, not even on purpose, but they lie just because they're under pressure, right? And it's
or they
just
feel
like
they have to protect the company that they work for.
right. And now, what if they're doing it out of malice because they're getting that paycheck from, Mother Russia or something like that? What? I don't know.
The only thing we can really do to try to combat that is pre-incident planning, right? Where teams work with the facilities, they understand the security issues, and we understand what all the physical devices are that we can physically close things down, shut stuff down to be able to try to prevent the leak. There's no way we can 100% do everything ahead of time, but getting to know the people within the facilities that are in your first two area is a really good start. Learning the equipment in the first two areas is a really good start. And overall, it'll make sure that you got everything you need in case you have to go onto a facility.
All right, finishing up this guy with the 13th one, environmental crimes and toxic dumping by criminal networks. This one, it says transnational criminal organizations, TCOs, are expanding into environmental crimes, including the illegal disposal of hazmat waste and industrial waste and chemical byproducts from synthetic drug production to avoid the cost of legally disposing and regulatory oversight. So consider it.
Yeah. Basically, they can't get stuff across the border, so they're doing it here. And the stuff that they're leaving behind tends to be very, very toxic. We can find it anywhere. We can find it in an apartment in the bad end of the city. We can find it out in the forest or the river or really just anywhere that they can dump it. They're not following the rules. They're leaving behind poisonous traps, and we have to be prepared because it will snag unsuspecting people.
So now for my just fire peeps out there, let's say you call to like a trash fire or a dumpster fire or illegal dumping or whatever it is. It could be and actually like it's wrapped inside there is a drum or a paint can or whatever the hell it is, and that could be a hazmat scene. So now these TCOs are using very corrosive acids, very volatile solvents, and they can definitely ignite or off gas when disturbed.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, if I'm going to make something, I'm not going to throw the toxic trash away in my garbage. I'm going to drive it somewhere and dump it illegally somewhere else, whether it's on the side of the road or whether in a dumpster. So the recon on these illegal dumpings, it has to be done relatively well. Like, we have to start to take the time and go, hold on a second. Like, yes, I'm masking up and I'm doing all those things, but am I walking into something that is more than it appears? We should never just assume that it's a dumped barrel or oil, that dumped barrels are just kind of like oil and paint. We need to take the precautions to make sure that we're not dealing with actual hazardous materials.